Mr. J. Robert Oppenheimer. The world knows him as the father of the atomic bomb. But, in his own words, he described himself as the god of death, quoting from Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure all of you know about Oppenheimer at this point because Christopher Nolan is making a film on this legendary scientist. Now my interest peaked when I heard this name because this name is associated with that atomic bomb that created the largest and the most horrific incident of mankind, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. So I got really interested and curious to know about this man's life. And I'm not surprised, and I'm sure you will not be either, if I tell you that I learned a lot more than you can imagine about this man's life. So what was his life like? Why did he hate his own creation so much? What is the history of making this nuclear weapon which changed the modern warfare of society? In this video, we're gonna talk about that. Mr. J. Robert Oppenheimer was born in New York City on April 22nd, 1904. He was born in a wealthy family. His father owned a textile business. Mr. J. Robert Oppenheimer also had a younger brother. From the very beginning of his life, this man was interested in many things. He was a versatile scholar. You would be surprised to know that in the early stages of his life, he was specially interested in English and French literatures. But then he went to college to get his bachelor degree. And from here on, his interest in chemistry began. And not only chemistry, but he also had growing interest in experimental physics. And after receiving his bachelor degree, he went on to Europe to pursue his higher study. During his time in Europe, he had the chance to work with some famous scientists at that time. But life wasn't always too easy for him. According to official history records, he suffered from major depressive episodes. These episodes were mostly witnessed by his friends. Even at one point, when one of his friends tried to cheer him up, he eventually got angry with him for some reason and then attacked. In fact, in a letter to his brother, he also said, "I want physics more than I want friends." I think at this point, it's easy to assume that this man was insanely dedicated to his work. But despite all of this, he and Max Born published Born-Oppenheimer approximation, which played a significant role in modern physics. And from here on, the next chapter began of his life. And the name of this chapter was Manhattan Project. Now, before understanding Oppenheimer's involvement in this project, you have to understand what Manhattan Project is. Manhattan Project is basically a USA-based research and development project which produced the first nuclear bomb during World War II, which means from 1942 to 1945. Here, the laboratory that designed the bomb was called Los Alamos, and the director of this particular laboratory was Robert Oppenheimer. But there is a pretty strange fact about this project. This project was indirectly started by Albert Einstein. Yes, you heard it right. Yes, the greatest scientist till date. So when Albert Einstein got to know about Germany's plan on making a nuclear bomb, he got really concerned about humanity. And rightfully so. So for the protection of every country and humanity, he reached out to then USA President Franklin Roosevelt to warn him about Germany's plan. And seeing this, the US government decided to make their own nuclear bombs. Although when the project started, Albert Einstein was not on the good list. In fact, every single scientist on the project was banned from talking to Mr. Albert Einstein. So here in this laboratory, Mr. J. Robert Oppenheimer and his colleagues were making the atomic bomb. Now, to understand the impact of this bomb in this world, you have to understand how this bomb actually works. These atomic bombs were created by a process called fission. Now, what is fission? It is basically a heavy atomic nucleus like uranium or plutonium gets divided into two fragments of roughly equal mass. But this process also includes releasing large amount of energy, and this particular energy is enough to destroy a city, a place, or even country. So this is how the nuclear bombs were made. Finally, after Manhattan Project, the incident, which is by far the most destructive act of humanity, happened. On 6th and 9th August 1945, United States dropped two bombs on Japan's two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I think it's needless to say how severe the impact was. If you are somebody who have never ever touched a history book, I'm still sure you are aware of the horrific effect of this bombing. In fact, it's a very common saying that till this day, there are children born with severe dysfunctionality due to this bombing. After seeing this devastation, Oppenheimer was concerned. Seeing the horrific output of his creation, he started questioning his decision. So he goes on to have a talk with then President Harry S. Truman. Oppenheimer talked about the usage of the bomb and also placing control over the usage of the bomb. But here, plans sort of went the other way, because his pledge was immediately dismissed. The main concern of US government that time was the development of nuclear bomb by Soviet Union. In fact, when Oppenheimer expressed that due to this horrific incident he feels the blood is on his hand, President Harry S. Truman got angry and he said that the blood is on my hands, so let me be concerned with it. And from this point on, his image sort of faltered. Eventually he got blacklisted from all the future projects. But Oppenheimer didn't stop there. He began working on US Atomic Energy Commission, which was founded by him. The main goal of this committee was to control the use of nuclear weapons. However, this move by Oppenheimer upset the government even more. So in 1949, Truman returned. He asked Mr. Oppenheimer to make an even better hydrogen bomb. But this time, Mr. Robert Oppenheimer refused. He thought the bomb would bring more devastation. And as he refused to take participation in making this bomb, he was fired. And not only that, but this project was led by his opposition. From here on, things started going even more downward, because now he was facing allegations for his political views. Although Mr. Robert Oppenheimer never ever openly claimed that he was a communist, but he was a part of a lot of communist parties, or at least he was alleged. Although Oppenheimer was never really into politics, but he was alleged to have some communist friends during the McCarthy era. Now, what is the McCarthy era? McCarthy era is basically that era in America where left-wingers were persecuted and was facing serious political repression. He was alleged to host fundraisers for the Republican cause in the Spanish Civil War. But eventually this support for communism led to him being arrested. Apparently in December 1940, there was a meeting of Executive Committee of American Liberties Union, which was another communist organization, and it is said that he was one of the executive members of this party, and that is why FBI in 1941 arrested him. After this, in 1954, Oppenheimer's security hearing happened. Although he was able to somewhat prove that he was innocent to the jury, but unfortunately, after this hearing, he was stripped off of his security clearance. And throughout these years, there were also multiple allegations and doubts over him that he was a Soviet spy, because he was friends with American Communist Party members. He was alleged to have a part in Soviet Union's nuclear bomb development, but the truth was far from it. And here, after 68 years, in 2022, he finally got somewhat justice. He was finally declared as an honest scientist who was genuinely concerned about humanity. The US Secretary of Energy, Jennifer N. Granholm, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, finally released a statement that said the trial that took place in 1954 was part of a flawed system. But eventually, after the trial, his career ended. He not only left all his work, but also cut off all his ties with USA government. Although President John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson tried to re-establish his reputation, but I guess that was too late. Now keep in mind that this man had endless contribution to physics. From nuclear physics, spectroscopy, to quantum field theory and quantum electrodynamics. He calculated the photoelectric effect of hydrogen, ultimately proving that sun has more helium gas than hydrogen. He also donated his inherited money for the betterment of physics. In fact, he was so determined in his job that he learned Dutch only in a couple of weeks just so he can give a speech. But unfortunately, Julius Robert Oppenheimer died on 18th February 1967. But no matter what he did, what his political views were, he was indeed an honest scientist.